my 7 weeks and then she'll.
We have everybody here? All right. November 20th, regular meeting of the Park Township Planning Commission is now called to order. We have everybody here, which is awesome. Thank you for all making it. I know Dave had some great work that he was doing last month, and we missed you, but glad you're back and know you did a lot of good things there. So the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes or amendments they would like to make? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve as submitted. Support.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? I believe none. Thank you. Next item is the approval of minutes from our last meeting. Did anybody have any changes that they recognize from that?
Mr. Chairman, I have one
Okay.
on page 6. And I think we were quoting Mr. Bosgraf in the second paragraph. It starts with the word Bosgraf. It was the second sentence. Got the easement information to change the calculation. That needs a little, like a when we got the easement information or something like that.
Okay.
It's not, to me, it wasn't clear what was being said.
Yes. When we got, I think would be a good change.
Or when he got, I think that's, and since he's here, I think that was that. Or is that when we, the township, got the easement? It's not easement information. I'm not sure who got
I think that
the
was,
information.
I think that was the applicant.
It was us that got the easement information.
I think we all got the easement information.
Together.
Well, I mean, we got. Makes sense that.
All right, the entire party got the easement information.
You could say easement, the updated easement information changed the calculation slightly.
Okay.
I have just a minor one on page 8.
Okay.
It was something that I said, actually down. It says blonde stated, then you go to the second sentence down, the word it at the end of the second line doesn't belong there.
Oh, I got you. Okay. The neighborhood got it.
It doesn't make sense, and I don't think I said that.
Okay. Sounds good.
I could have.
I have one on page 8. And it was actually, maybe this isn't a change because it is what I said, but it isn't what I meant. So maybe so the fourth paragraph from the bottom, he stated that either way he voted, there would not be a quorum. It actually would be majority. We had a quorum. We didn't have a majority. So I don't know if we changed that because it was what I meant. It was what I said. So any other changes? All right. Motion to accept as amended.
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, I believe there are none opposed. Okay, the first item on our agenda is, let's see, where's my agenda? Here it is right here. We've got a public comment. We are going to be reviewing, this will be the final review of the Foxglove PUD. There will not be a public hearing per se because that took place at the last meeting, but there will be a public comment. So if there's any comments that you would like to make from a public perspective regarding Foxglove, now would be the time. Just a few comments around this. I want to just kind of frame up the purpose of the public comment and public hearings. It really is the time to hear from our members of the public. We welcome their comments, which are very important to us, and we consider those in decisions that we make. Please note that we want to limit those comments to 3 minutes for each person. I think we have a small group tonight, so I will say this anyway. In order to be courteous and respectful to everyone in attendance, please remain quiet and do not engage in side conversations. There should be no cheering, booing, or clapping. Got that in there, Mika. As a reminder, please go to the podium to comment, silent, and please give us your name when you start speaking. Also, please address your remarks to the chair. Note that we will not have dialogue during that time. This is not a Q&A time. It's really your time to inform us of your views. Additionally, please keep in mind that this meeting itself belongs to the Planning Commission and that while public input is incredibly valuable, you will not participate in the actual decision-making discussion itself. Once the public hearing, public comment period has been closed, public input ends as well. And if you do have any factual questions, staff, Mika will be happy to capture and address those at a later date. Okay, so with the ground rules, we've got actually kind of an interesting scenario that took place this week, and it's actually a good opportunity for education. But Mika, why don't you go ahead and introduce where we are with Foxglove? I think there's been some additional updates since our last meeting, and I know it'll be beneficial to Commissioner Coppinall as well.
Yep. So at the last meeting, there was a lot of conversation about connectivity, the reasons for connectivity. I sent out a little bit of information about that, just as far as a general thoughts on connectivity. Part of that was on the question about fire safety. And so I have the fire chief here to make sure that he can answer any questions directly and it's not transmitted through me, fire expert. And so, I'll try to give you what I can, but it might take a winding road. So I'm going to let him speak to that part. I did talk to the Ottawa County Road Commission several times, and as far as they're always in favor of that connectivity as well. Looked at traffic safety as well on 32nd. They had their traffic engineer take a look at that. They are going to be requiring a turn lane to be installed somewhere on 32nd in order to help facilitate some of that movement for the direction that has the heavier traffic volumes. Also looked at the neighborhood streets. There was no significant crash history, not really anything notable at all on those streets there as well. So they weren't concerned about that. They are looking for additional right-of-way along the cul-de-sac. Just got those drawings today, had some more conversations with them. And I just before the meeting touched base with Mike so he can speak to that as well. It's possible that would have an effect on the site plan. He thinks that there's probably enough room there already. If it does have an effect on the site plan, it'll have to come back to the Planning Commission for review. If it's a relatively minor change, then it can be reviewed by staff and then we inform you about it. If it's something that's more significant, then it would have to come back again. So that's kind of how that process works. We try to have meetings with all of the stakeholders ahead of time to kind of move away from that. We got several questions ahead of time in the emails that I was going to go through and just kind of comment on some of those. So as part of our preliminary review process, we have stakeholder group meetings about once a month. We cancel them when they're not needed, but we have our engineers at Prine and Newhoff, Park Township Fire, Holland BPW, their electric, their water, their wastewater, and broadband when it's applicable, Holland Charter Township water and wastewater when it's on the north side, and then also the Ottawa County Road Commission. So we're all in there looking at these plans and saying, okay, is there anything that we see on the front end so that it makes it a little bit easier down the road? Now, sometimes things still come up, but these are reviewed by at least at a preliminary stage by all of these agencies beforehand, and then most of them have some kind of final sign-off that has to happen before they reach completion. So Ottawa County Road Commission handles all the streets and safety stuff. There were some questions about pavement condition and the cul-de-sac, and that is something that the Road Commission looks at. It is a public road, so it's publicly funded. As far as sanitary sewer, that was another question that came up. That's something that the BPW takes a look at. Our engineers sometimes look at that too. They look at where the sewer is going to connect, how it needs to flow, if there's capacity. So there weren't any issues raised with that in this development. Sometimes we'll say, sometimes there are issues raised. If you're going to put it there, it's going to require a pump station. Pump stations cost a lot of money. We don't have the elevation there, so sometimes there are design changes that come into play, but that's not the case here. As far as there's a question about flooding water because a flower field floods. And there is that dry basin that's in there. Water is kind of channeled into that area. And so the intent is for that water to stay on site there. And then Ottawa County Water Resources is typically looking at those as well. So I think those were the main points that I wanted to hit. I'm happy to answer any other questions as well.
Nico, when did these meetings occur in the timeline?
So those occur before the first time they come to Planning Commission.
And these are all the places that you're. referring to? Yeah.
Most of them. So that's kind of the preliminary. And then as we go through it, the more questions come up and we go back.
So is it the Ottawa County Road Commission that's gonna be turning or putting that left turn lane in?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's kind of on their side of things. And so it's done in connection with the developer, and Mike can tell you more about exactly how that happens, because that's
Okay.
not my part.
And I just realized after my diatribe about public comment and public hearing that I jumped right over it. So, do I need to amend the agenda to be able to go back to public comment?
I think you can just go to public comment. Just do
Okay,
that.
if we could, we'll come back to this discussion because there's certainly a lot more there. I'm going to open public comment. Do we have, anyone from the public that would like to comment tonight? Anyone on the left side? No? Yes.
I would, but, excuse me, Doug Reagan, I live at 1551 West 32nd Street. And I'm just listening to be informed here. Is this the flower field directly across the street from Park Church that you're discussing? It is. And what is the status of that project right now? Has it been approved to move forward, or is that or premature for that?
Are we talking about this development?
Yes.
Yes, we're actually, that's kind of the discussion tonight. Updated information from our last meeting, and then the expectation would be we would make a recommendation to the board this evening.
Okay, so as my comment, I don't want to take a lot of your time. We're residents right there, very close to that location on the north side of 32nd, directly across from there. Boscraft Builders is putting in a very big development just on the other side of 32nd there. And my comment would be to kind of wait and see what the impact of that would be before you approve this second large development in this flower field. As a grandparent, I often have my grandchildren there, and the traffic on 32nd Street is really increasing rapidly already. And I feel like I'm gonna have to build some kind of a fence or barrier across my driveway to keep my grandchildren from approaching 32nd Street, because we have trucks doing like 60, 70 miles an hour coming right down that hill already. And just the thought of the increased traffic from another development, even before we see the impact from the development on the south side, is a concern to me.
So this is south of 32nd, so that would be, that's Allegan County. Okay,
But the
that's what I
Allegan
was gonna say, we
County-
haven't seen that one, yeah.
Okay, so that is not Park Township, that's not even on your agenda, but
Yes,
it's
yes.
gonna impact the area. And, you know, I was just looking at your vision there. Park Township is a family-friendly, connected community that values natural resources. And that's why we moved here, you know, because we do as well. So I'm a little bit concerned of the impact of taking that last bit of green space in our neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other commentary from, or feedback or input from the public? If not, we'll close public comment. Thank you. All right, I guess at this point, we'll jump back in. Mika, I think, did you have everything covered that you wanted to, or were there any additional?
There was just one other note that I was going to kind of pass on. So Mr. Martin was planning to be at the meeting tonight, but he's ill, so he wasn't able to be here. But one of the things that he was going to talk about that we had talked about was the concept of the discretion of the planning commission and the types of decisions that the planning commission makes. So the term that he used when we were talking on the phone was discretion, which is fettered by standards. And so that was something that I think that we had talked about as well. The chair and I had talked about. And so you guys have been through this before, and so understand that this is based on the zoning district that this is located in, and then the standards and the ordinance for PUD and for site condominium and for those sorts of things. So those are the bases of the ordinance. And so that was something that he had wanted to emphasize, was that concept that the discretion of the planning commission exists within those bounds. As opposed to just being kind of does this feel like a good idea or not? So I think you're aware of that, but that was something that he had wanted to talk about.
Fettered, was the word he used?
It was, of course.
Okay.
I thought it was too good to drop.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, thank you. I started to say earlier, we actually had kind of an interesting, an opportunity for education on this one. And I'm going to make a couple of comments and then I'll hand that off to Commissioner Bourbon. We have, actually, let's see, I guess, does the applicant want to make any comments or any updates or changes prior to that? I know you just found out about one piece that may have some impact, but are there any other tweaks or things that you want to make us aware of?
I can give a,
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Mike Bosgraf Homes, probably, the biggest change, which is not really much of a change, is, and it just came over late this afternoon, is from Ottawa County. The cul-de-sac, they're proposing that if they ever redo it, they want to move it 10 feet onto our property. So the whole thing just shifts and gets reconfigured slightly. It's so they're asking for a more rounded proposed additional right of way. If you remember the site plan in front of me, but there's a little jog, you know, close to Jerome, that little square, and basically they're just kind of evening out that square and rounding it out. So it really doesn't affect our site and doesn't really affect the geometry, except it shifts that cul-de-sac. Yet to be determined is what happens when we go talk to Ottawa County Road Commission about how much of that cul-de-sac we have to repave. We're going to pick up a sewer line out of that street. Whether we go through there or not, we still have to get into Jerome Street, pick up the sewer line, and then we'd be required to repave any damage that we did to that road. My guess is what Ottawa County is going to ask is that while we're in there, that we shift that cul-de-sac to the south side, and it's just a little spot, and probably repave that area. So it's probably a 10 by 20 pavement area. It has no effect on the neighbors. It's all on our property and all in our right of way.
Okay.
In addition, there was a conversation about the left turn lane. It's actually, as you're going east, they're proposing, which means they're going to require that we have a left turn lane, which just means we lighten that area so that traffic turning left into our community can stage there. People going to the west will have a decel lane that they can turn in. So that was, you know, basically the comments from Ottawa County. Typically that happens as we get farther down the line. Typically we even get board approval. It goes to the county kind of, you know, but seeing we've kind of had a jump start in several meetings, we've actually gotten a lot farther than we typically get. So we think we're pretty close to having final comments on most everything.
Okay.
Did you want me to get into reasoning why we should, or what we did, or should I just leave it to you for?
If there's, yeah, I think if there's things that you think are relevant that you want to make sure you cover, okay, that's fine.
The only thing, I'll keep it short then. I did get a letter, and I believe the township got a letter from Denny and Ellens, Denny Ellens. They're the neighbors to the east that has the big parcel, and they're in support of the project, and basically said that there's much more traffic when the school is there down the road, and so they're in support of it. I believe you got the letter.
I don't remember.
Okay, yeah, everybody's shaking their head.
You did?
Got the letter.
Just saw.
So we were basically back after we tabled it last time to do a little review. We're back with essentially the original plan. You know, the thought process behind that is, you know, first is, you know, the Park Township ordinance, you know, strongly encourages connectivity. The ordinance for the zoning encourages it, but then also your master plan encourages it. We did go back and try to look at private streets, public streets, and we keep getting caught up with this 800-foot length. And you know, we can only go 800 feet with a cul-de-sac. And so we kept kind of bumping into that. Barring gridding it out, we just felt that this was still the best design we had. If we go back to a public street, we're basically, then they're gonna absolutely require us to hit Jerome, if not, you know, some of the other streets. So we still think connectivity by your ordinance, by design of the 800-foot section. And then I believe you went back to the fire department and had that conversation. And so we felt it was prudent to come back with the plan that we originally submitted.
Okay. Based on what you know, and I don't know if you have an answer to this yet, it sounds like you're saying that the recent addition that you just found out about in the last couple hours, as far as the cul-de-sac goes and the right of way, do you have a read at this point as to whether that is going to impact any of the lots that are on that end?
The cul-de-sac?
Yeah,
Sorry, this is
the right,
as good as it gets.
okay, that would be helpful.
It literally came late this afternoon. So this was that little square that we've already proposed. This is our property here.
Okay,
This is the neighbor. They are proposing to shift the cul-de-sac, whether we do it or they do it at a later date. They wanted this easement to be able to get a bigger cul-de-sac that meets regulations.
okay,
Now they're asking for this red portion. We have something like 101 feet of frontage. We need 85.
okay.
So it doesn't affect the layout of,
You could give up 20, roughly 20 feet
yeah, we could,
if, yeah.
so. That is right. Okay. This is what. No, right here, so that's that square, they're basically taking a line right here. And saying they would like that to be more right of way, so taking from our line and giving the county more right of way. All right,
I got it.
you got it. Very good.
All right, thank you. I think at this point, now we'll have an opportunity for something that's a little bit different. We have something that's it's part of being in a public board, public commission called ex parte communications. And essentially what that means in our role is that if there is any communication that happens outside of our meeting, whether it's one-on-one, and typically it is, that needs to be communicated to the entire commission so that everybody hears the same thing, and also in a public forum in our open meeting. That happened this week when Commissioner Bourbon was actually walking the Foxglove property and had a conversation with one of the neighbors in that area. So with that, Dan, I'm going to hand that off to you, and you could provide a recap of kind of how that all takes shape.
And while I hear Lorna tapping way over there, I do have a copy for you that I can hand to you.
Thank you.
This was last Friday, on the 14th of November. I went to the Foxglove site and parked that very cul-de-sac. And I was there to physically myself measure the Jerome Street width, a number I wanted to know. And it is exactly 20 feet. And I acknowledge that the Foxglove plan had a 26-foot street width in the plan. So I'll be talking about that later in a second. But while I was doing that and walking back to my truck while this German Shepherd kept his eye on me, I was engaged by a gentleman named Eugene Tritanichenko. Don't ask me to say that twice. 1501 Jerome. He is one of the 3 homes fronting the Jerome Street circular end of the cul-de-sac. Eugene stated that any more than 6 cars passes per day is an increase in traffic. He is right, since there are but 3 homes on a dead-end circle. So he was emphasizing that there may be not a big adjustment to traffic in other areas, but on that cul-de-sac there and the street out to Beechwood, there would be a significant traffic increase. He himself is going to use Foxglove to reach 32nd, as will others on Jerome and the gridded streets around it. That's more traffic for his cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac circle of pavement is cracking and the radius is too small for garbage trucks and delivery services. I'd love to call him right now and tell him that the county road commission is taking care of it.
He'll definitely feel heard. Yes.
Eugene is worried about flooding water. We heard about that as the flower field often flooded but perked. He was pleased to hear of the retention pond for stormwater. He said Jerome is a neighborhood of elders who make walking loops he called promenades the street almost every day when the weather was good. Eugene is pleased about access to Foxglove sidewalks. He has a dog, but he fears for the dog with increase in former cul-de-sac traffic. He noted that his lot is 1.4 acres, which as an aside surprised me that it was that big. Eugene is concerned with the capacity of the sanitary sewer to be connected to Jerome, the manholes within the circle. So that's another thing he's going to be glad to hear has been verified for capacity. Eugene is pleased that water will be coming off 32nd Street. Eugene fears the impact of heavy equipment on the thin pavement of Jerome. I think I responded with your intention is to bring all heavy equipment in off 32nd. He fears an assessment for a road redo. I encouraged him to purposefully welcome Foxglove neighbors and demonstrate the strong Jerome culture that wants to be shared and extended. I discussed the probability that there would be many more children in the combined neighborhoods, and that brought a smile to his face. That's it. Then I left, and the dog let me go.
Thanks, Dan. Were there any, while we're on this topic, were there any other ex parte conversations that happened over the course of the last month that we need to bring up? No. Okay. Excellent. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. I think at that point, I want to go ahead and continue our conversation, our discussion at this point. We don't have any further public commentary. And I think we've had a lot of discussion around that. I've got a few things that I guess I'd like to comment on, and then I'm going to open it up for further discussion with the commission. I do think, and I'm just going to use this, and Mika commented it. I had a couple of notes on this as well. We have guiding principles that we need to operate under, and these typically, depending on the type of development or application we're looking at, take into account zoning ordinance. In this case, standards for a PUD. Our tree preservation is certainly within our purview. And we map those to the future land use plan and also the master plan priorities. And I think Mika mentioned connectivity, as did the applicant on this, and I think access to mobility and side paths is a really important one. And it was interesting that your conversation brought that up as well. I can't speak to the fact that there'll be more or less traffic, but I do think that with this, assuming this is approved, that the folks that live in the Jerome and adjacent roads will find the access to 32nd Street through Foxglove as being real positive. The other piece that I think about when I think about community connectivity is access to the bike paths out on 32nd Street. It's kind of a winding path to get there today. And I think having a sidewalk new site that has direct access to 32nd Street is going to be a plus. Lots of other things we can talk about on this, but I'll hold that and open it up for discussion with the commission.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions.
Certainly.
Mr. Bosgraf, Mike, one thing jumped out on me because on these plans, sort of the exploded view of the pool and there came out down in the bottom. Are you expecting everybody in the development is going to walk to the pool? I guess my question is, I didn't see anything on the plan for a parking at the pool or
We've done this several times, and what we found best is it's a community pool. So we did Sundance Community in Zealand. We actually put it in the backyard in some common space that all there was sidewalks going there. Sundance, I think, is 90-something home sites. We don't allow any parking, so everybody has to walk to the pool. We also did it in Stevens Point where there was 176 homes. I think we provided like 3 parking spots, a couple handicap spots, but we tried not to encourage, anybody to drive down there. And that'd be the same here. We've in Cobblestone, as an example, which is closer on the south side, has a turnout area, but there's no parking for that pool either. And that's 100 units.
And there's no parking on the street, is that correct?
There's no parking
on the street. Okay,
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. One other question, which I referred to earlier. When I got the latest, and actually reversed to the original plan, it really stuck out at me when the intersection in Jerome of the private road, your street, and the 20-foot wide Jerome Street, I saw the word compatible in some documentation or an ordinance. They just walk me through again, if you would, how you came to 26 feet when the ordinance is a minimum of 22 and you're not allowing parking on the street.
The ordinance is 26. I believe we're at the minimum ordinance, or we should be.
For a private road.
For a private road.
Okay.
Narrower, I'm glad to do it. Usually I have to wrestle with the fire chief. It's loose. There's a huge conversation about with the streets and, narrower streets slow down traffic, but then he gets to have his side.
Right, but if the ordinance is 26 foot minimum, then that's the answer.
And I thought the ordinance said 26.
So our private road ordinance is 26 as storm sewer is included, including valley gutters, otherwise 22. However, the fire chief does have something typically to say about that. So I don't know if you'd like to comment. Or if the commission would like.
Well, but what you just said, because this has storm sewers and gutters, right? So it's a 26-foot minimum. Is that pavement or include the?
So a valley gutter is
This
kind of underneath.
It's not part of a drive lane.
It's probably not considered part of a
Drive
drive
lane.
lane.
Okay.
It is
Okay.
drive on in the same material,
Okay.
but that's what gets it to 26.
This was going to be my last chance to ask that question, so I had to do it.
Now you technically can give a departure, but
Because it was a PUD, there are certain things you can say for this development, we will do that. But, and you can ask and have that conversation. It's a good time because the fire chief is here and he can explain why he likes the road width where it's at, but.
Well, I do have a question for the chief that's part of this, and so I'm going to put him on the spot. Let's imagine Foxglove is complete. And you guys get a call for emergency services, be it fire or EMT, whatever. What will be the route from the fire station on 160th to Foxglove that you would take?
If we're leaving from the station, where the station would be, which would be north on 160th of there. Our best or quickest route would be turn down Jerome and come in on Jerome on the back side of it. If we miss that Jerome Street, we would take 32nd Street. Taking a look at it and driving both, I don't think there's going to be a big time factor savings. I think you're talking less than a minute.
Because the other streets have a higher speed
Speed
design.
limit, correct. And two, depending on what the situation would be if it would be a priority one, we would be running lights and sirens. If it would be a medical lift assist, we'd consider that a priority 3. We wouldn't be running lights and sirens. So our speed factor could change. Something like that, where it's located to the fire station. I don't think it's going to be a major player in the event. So going down Jerome, if we take a look and going down Jerome, more residential, possibility of more people out. We got to take that into a factor compared to where Jerome's not going to have your sidewalks. 32nd Street has your sidewalks or bike paths. So more than likely people would be on those bike paths. So
Well, I think I'm hearing good news for the people on Jerome. Would you agree with that? That your route would more probably be 160th and 32nd than Jerome would be?
well, it would be dependent upon the driver and how it did, but yeah, we could go we would use either way. So I think it would be probably more familiar with people coming off 32nd Street. Because dispatch is going to give us the cross streets and they're going to use 32nd Street and Jerome. So I believe the majority of the people living, would take 32nd Street. I know right exactly where it is, just like Ottawa Beach Road,
Right.
something coming off there. It's more popular. So, but taking a look in prime respective to where the station is, that's not going to be the factor. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming, Chief Canby. We had lots of questions or comments about that during our last meeting, and it was tried to be persuaded that fire trucks would be coming down Jerome because it's a shorter route, or an ambulance would come down Jerome because it's a shorter route. But I thank you for your comments that depending upon what the service call is, will depend upon what route is taken.
Okay.
Yeah, residents were concerned with it being a narrow road and having your big trucks come through. Thank you.
Do you want me to cover why we have the 26-foot road?
Yeah.
First of all, in 2010, the Township Board adopted the International Fire Code. Okay, so basically what that really did was bring the fire department at the front of the table when we had developments come in the township. We never had that before. Prior to that, we were just like the public. We drive by and it's like, oh, we got a subdivision there. We never got notified or anything. So with that, and I pushed that to get that through, and what it did is it give us a chance to look at developments, whether they're commercial or residential subdivisions, and let us have our comment because we know how our operation runs. The big thing that we've seen in the township, and we can take a look at them, especially like here, 1st, 2nd, 3rd Street, going down, especially up in Idlewood, and that we had really narrow roads that were built years ago when there wasn't a code and stuff, and we have to live with them until forever. Okay, so when we looked at roads and to start discussion with roads, and we looked at what the county roads were doing, they came up with the 26, and they give a description of how the roads had to be constructed to be able to handle the weight of the equipment. Cement trucks, fuel trucks, stuff like that. Fire trucks, extremely heavy. Well, if we take a look at a fire truck, we're starting at pretty close to 8 feet. They're not quite 8 feet, but we're really pushing. So almost the full lane where our cars are a little bit narrower and stuff like that. Fire trucks push way to the edge. So we're doing 8 feet. Well, all of our trucks have side operation panels. And what that means is I'm going to have a firefighter on the side, usually the driver's side, operating the pump and the truck itself. I'm gonna have a hydrant or a hose that comes from the hydrant and hooked to the side of that. That hose is a 5-inch hose and will allow over 1,000 gallons a minute to go into that truck from our hydrants. And it needs about 4 feet there with the safety of our operator. So now we're into 12 feet. So if you take a look at a road, I need just for that one truck, especially if they pull way off to the side or to the edge of the road, I need 12 feet. But now what if I need another truck in there? Or what if something goes really bad and I have to evacuate people? Or if I got to get an ambulance in, or we have a collapse of a building or an explosion of a building, and I have extremely people hurt. We just had it July 3 down off 160th, where we had that explosion a couple of years ago, and I had 9 patients. If our roads weren't wide enough, I couldn't be running different equipment alongside of it. So for the safety and the operational level, we need 26 feet to accommodate that. And so if you take a look at all of our developments, since I've been the fire chief, I require at 26 feet. Benjamin's Hope, Point West 1, all our new subdivisions that's going in Foxglove will be another one. So that's kind of the standard across there. I have allowed him to go to 24 feet, but then I need a 1 foot ribbon of road gravel with no landscaping up to the blacktop, because I got to be able to get a truck there. All of our township is covered under the automatic aid agreement with either Holland Township, Graskup, or Holland City. What that is they'll bring a ladder truck. We don't own a ladder truck. We're able to borrow theirs on a fire call in that. In that truck, the weights on that truck will go over 76,000 pounds. So with the width and the trucks and the riggers going out, I need that on the road width, because our houses are going 2-story, 3-story, and going on up. So we're trying to eliminate any of the 8-foot roads. So that's kind of, it follows the International Fire Code.
Thank you. Great education for us. We appreciate that.
Okay.
Any additional?
Yeah, those are the data.
That's easily supported, right? Any other questions for Fire Chief? All right. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. You bet.
All right. Dan, did you have anything?
I have one last question for Mike. And it was sparked by a communication from Mika that mentioned shielding at that intersection. And at first I said, what's that mean? And this might not be what it did mean, but again, I go to the intersection of your road with the cul-de-sac, and there's a house straight ahead of it. Is there going to be, I guess this is not just a question for you, but is there an obligation to provide some shielding for the front living room of that house? Because any traffic coming this way out of Foxglove will be, when they stop there, will be shining right into that house. Is that what you meant by shielding, or was it something completely different?
I don't remember.
Well, then I'll ask Mike again. Is there any concerns about that? I mean, what's from your background and having the same situation arise? How does this work out?
It happens probably every direction. So probably the best recent example is our project in Park Township on First Avenue. The neighbor across the street, the trees that we had to take out of there for the road that were in the right of way were essentially Park Township trees. But at the same time, we were impactful on his house. So if you go by there now, we ended up re-landscaping his yard, which wasn't a requirement, but we felt we were impacting him, and he's got some, he now has some trees up in the front, and it's not uncommon for us to.
Okay, well, I could say that this particular address hasn't written a letter or made a public comment or thing, but when Mika piqued my mind, I thought, what's she mean? And maybe that was it, but it wasn't. Okay, thank you. I'm done. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Sure.
Now, I had the same questions as Commissioner Urban and Chief Gamby answered. So.
Okay, thank you. Glenn.
Thank you for all of the information. I think I don't see any changes to the plan, just a comment. And I believe it's building upon what you said at the last meeting. It's the entrance off of 32nd Street. Is that really a nice entrance and done incredibly well? People that live in this subdivision are really going to want to come and go out of that entrance. And I just think when the developer does a really nice job at the entrance, people are proud to live there. And that's really the way that they want to come and go. So I think that will maybe keep lots number 1, 30, 31, and 32 from wanting to go out on Jerome, but kind of continue to want to use a 32nd. So I think that sense of entry is really important, and it encourages people to use that.
Okay, go ahead, Char.
Circling back, thank you for adding the sidewalk back in.
Yes.
It was always there, just not on the plan, right? Very good. Oh, you've got, I believe there's a plan for one sign, right? If I read it correctly, and it's on is it the 32nd Street exit or entrance? Okay. Mr. Coppell.
I just want to thank the rest of the commissioners for doing all the hard work while I was gone last month. I've got no questions or comments.
Stephanie.
I appreciate the feedback and guidance. My comments still stand from the previous times that we've reviewed this. I will say, thinking about connectivity and reading some of the supplemental information that was provided to us, I did think it was very interesting. The piece that I picked up on, I think it was our second link or third, but specifically was focusing on connectivity with cul-de-sacs and thinking about municipalities and their general ordinances and policies that discourage their use, while also thinking about ways to find varied ways to stay connected. Personally, I still think that's a strategic avenue that would be of higher preference. Obviously, that's not where we are from our ordinance perspective, but I think it is something that's still food for thought.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Dennis.
Just a couple of things. I want to compliment the developer. I think he's been extremely helpful in resolving issues as we've discussed them. This wasn't always the way. We had a lot of difficulty years ago with getting any concessions from the developers when they had a PUD, because I really felt they were in charge. So I appreciate the ability to work with the public and the commission in getting this the best product that it possibly could be. The only other thing I wanted to say was I was very concerned about the connectivity piece, because I foresaw if we did not have connectivity with Jerome, those homeowners in the new development may have experienced the added expense of having to put in sprinkling systems. And that would have only increased the cost to the people who would be buying into that area. So I really appreciate how this has come to fruition.
Great. Thank you. It feels like we're getting close to being able to have a motion on this, but I think it would be useful to go through the standards. I think we talk about the standards. The master plan is out there for everybody to look at and understand. I think particularly in a PUD, I think the standards might not be as obvious or evident to everybody, and I think it's useful to go through that. So I will work my way through it. I know last time, Dennis, I asked you to do it, but I'm gonna take this one on myself, and if I start losing my voice, I will let you know. So the standards for PUD, which is what we is kind of our metric, our measuring stick on this that we need to follow, and it's one of those things that is Dan Martin said fetters us. So, so the first standard we do with the PUD result in a recognizable and substantial benefit to ultimate users of the project and to the community, and the benefit would otherwise be unfeasible or unlikely to be achieved. And from a standard perspective, the proposed PUD allows for a neighborhood with a large open space area as well as clubhouse and pool. The Planning Commission determines that that standard has been met. The PUD will not result in a significant increase in the need for public services, and facilities will not place a significant burden upon surrounding lands or the natural environment unless the resulting adverse effects are adequately provided for or mitigated by features of the PUD as approved. The proposed PUD includes 32 home sites and is located adjacent to an existing neighborhood where water and sewer lines are already present. As a result of these two factors, neither a substantial increase in public services or facilities nor a significant burden on surrounding lands or the natural environment is anticipated. So we believe that this standard has been met as well. The PUD will be generally compatible with the master plan and consistent with the intent and objectives of this chapter, 38, Article 3, Division 8 in this chapter. The proposed PUD is compatible with the Township Master Plan, as we've talked about, which designates the subject parcel as LMDR, low and medium density residential, and also the residential zoning district. The Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met as well. The PUD will not result in significant adverse effects upon nearby or adjacent lands and will be generally compatible with the with the character of the surrounding area. The proposed PUD is comparable in density and use to the existing neighborhoods that surround it and will be generally compatible with the character of the surrounding area. Planning Commission determines that this standard appears to be met. The PUD will protect all floodplains and wetlands from filling except as approved for essential services or recreational amenities. There's a flood hazard area approximately 400 feet east of the parcel on the south side of 32nd Street. A very small area of wetland is present along the north property line and included in the open space. Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met. The PUD will preserve and maintain mature woodlands, fields, pastures, and meadows, and create sufficient buffer areas to minimize conflicts between residential and agricultural uses. This proposed PUD will preserve portions of the wooded at the northwest corner of the parcel. There are no agricultural uses adjacent to this property. The Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met. PUD will leave scenic views and vistas unblocked or interrupted, particularly as seen from the public road rights of way, insofar as practicable. Although a pleasant area, scenic views and vistas are not present in this particular location, the Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met. The PUD will protect the rural roadside character where desirable. The proposed PUD is in an area of mixed residential and agricultural use. Trees are proposed to be planted along 32nd Street, which is in keeping with the nature of the area. The Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met. Pedestrian walkways may be provided so that pedestrians can walk safely and easily through the site. The sidewalk is proposed along one side of all street legs in this neighborhood. It connects to the active transportation side path on 32nd Street as well as to Jerome. And again, we've spoken to the connectivity benefits from this as well. The Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met. The individual lots, buildings, roadways, and open space areas are designed to minimize the alteration of natural and environmental site features. The former agricultural field, the parcel as it exists today, is relatively devoid of natural site features. As noted above, an existing wooded area will remain. The Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met. PUD will be adequately served by public utilities and services such as police and fire protection, or public or on-site community water or sanitary sewer. And in this case, the proposed PUD will be served by public water and sewer. Storm drainage facilities appear to be adequate and will be fully addressed by the Ottawa County Water Resources Commissioner. Since the project is adjacent to existing residential development, it isn't expected to create noticeable additional demand on fire or police services. The Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met. The PUD shall be in compliance with all applicable federal, state, county, and township laws, ordinances, and regulations. Staff has reviewed applicable standards, and the standard appears to be met. The developer is required to ensure continued compliance with all applicable standards. The Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met. If the PUD is to be completed in phases, the PUD shall be designed so that each phase is complete in and of itself in terms of services, facilities, and open spaces, and so that each phase contains all of the features necessary to ensure the protection of natural resources and the health, safety, and welfare of the users of the PUD and the occupants of the surrounding area. The Planning Commission may recommend, and the Township Board may recommend, amenities such as recreational facilities, walkways, and similar facilities be completed upon occupancy of a determined number or percentage of dwelling units or non-residential uses. This is intended to be a single-phase project, and the Planning Commission has determined that the standard has been met. So those are the standards. Good job. Thank you. I try to read well and clearly. So with that, is there any other further discussion on this? I think we've gotten pretty good perspective, but I want to make sure that everybody's had a chance to express their, provide their input on this. If so, I would entertain a motion I'll entertain a motion. I won't try to lead the witness.
Well, I'll first ask a question before
Sure.
a motion. Is this what you're, if the vote is to approve, is the motion to approve this resolution?
I think I think that's the draft document that needs to go to the board, correct?
Yeah, that's the draft that typically go to the board. Yeah.
So is that what I'm motioning to approve? This resolution?
Sure. A motion would be to, what our role is, and it's always a good thing to be able to clarify. Our role is to evaluate the information that's been presented. Its alignment with master plan, its alignment with ordinance and tree preservation, the areas that we have responsibility for, and to make a recommendation to the board for approval or denial. So we're actually evaluating everything that we have, and the motion would be to either approve, deny, or I guess amend would be another option. But I think at this point, again, I won't lead the witness, but that's what we would be. That's what we would be making a motion on. The next step, it would be going to the board.
Yeah, and so you would recommend, you would say, I would make a motion to approve this resolution and report to recommend to the Township Board of Trustees. And so the resolution and report includes the standards that you had just gone through. So if you had wanted to make any changes to those, we would make changes to those before they went to the board. But it contains really all the stuff that you've talked about all along and all the different standards, and it goes through all of that.
Well, I will move that having met all the ordinances and the requests for study and responses from study, that we approve the resolution as drafted and provide a recommendation to the Board of Trustees for their approval.
Okay, we have support.
Was that Dennis?
Yes, okay. I'll restate that just so that we're all clear on it, and I'll try to restate it. I think what the motion was that based on the input that we've gotten, based on the information provided, the questions that we've asked, obviously, and the information provided, you're making a recommendation for approval to the board on Foxglove.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have a second. We had a couple seconds.
I may have spoken up first, so I would concur with the chairman's definition.
Well, with that, we have a motion and a second. I'd like to put that up for a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, thank you. It's approved. Approved to go to the board. Thanks all. And thanks to the applicant.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Just a quick side note, we have a fairly sizable footprint right now where we're in front of a lot of planning commissions, boards on projects, and some of the changes that you're making at Park Township here are for the better. And the decorum, we disagreed, we've struggled, we've discussed, and you really are a good board, and you've got a good amount of decorum, which I don't see, as I travel around. So thank you.
Great feedback. Thank you. You can stick around for the conversation around tree preservation and the
Wow.
looking for that. Do we need a recess, or is everybody good to keep on forward? Okay.
Good.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks all. I believe the next item on our agenda is the flood hazards ordinance, floodplain. Mika, you want to introduce this for us?
Yes, this is fantastic news. I was really excited about this.
Okay. This was on our agenda.
This was on our agenda. This was the thing to tackle. I knew that it hadn't been updated in quite some time. It's kind of a big deal. If it's not updated, we're required by FEMA to maintain these certain standards in order for our residents to be able to get flood insurance. So we don't have tons of people in a floodplain in this area, but we do have people who live in these special flood hazard areas. So we want to make sure that we maintain that and we stay up to speed. And so most of the references in the ordinance were to the 2011, I think, version. It was at least it was well out of date, and I didn't know what standards had changed since then. And I'm able to kind of do the basic reviews that we have to do for a site plan, but not to go through all the standards and say what works. So we sent it over to Klein and Newhoff. They have a certified floodplain manager there, who's also one of their civil engineers, went through our whole ordinance and took a look at it, and there were only some minor changes. Most of the changes are only to change the version of the flood maps that we're looking at. There was one change where it was like, well, that's actually never allowed. This shouldn't have been the ordinance to begin with. You can't give a variance for that. But that was the only thing. So I thought that was pretty great. So this is just kind of an information. Take a first look at it. It will be noticed for the next meeting. It will be on your agenda then, and then we'll move it forward that way.
All right. Does everybody understand what a 100-year floodplain is, or 100-year floodplain elevation? I did not. And I looked that up. Go ahead, Mika.
Yeah, it's see if I can remember it off the cuff. It's a 1% annual flood risk.
Right.
And so that's they don't like to say 100-year floodplain anymore because it's happening more than once a year, more than that frequency. But there are a few different levels of flood hazard area that are established by FEMA, and one of them is this kind of what we think of as a general floodplain, where it's about once every 100 years. They also identify more of a once every 500 years, so they have a different map that's for that. That's not regulated floodplain, so if you live in that area, you don't need to purchase flood insurance. It's a good idea to see where you are at, just to kind of think it through for yourself. As we've seen some of these bigger floods in areas, not a bad idea to just kind kind of take a look at your property. It doesn't ever hurt anything if you have an opportunity to go just a little bit higher, something like that. And then there's also I'm gonna forget the name of it right now, but it's the water movement area, and it's a different level of flood hazard. So some of those floodplain areas you're able to build in as long as you follow a whole bunch of different rules and regulations about it. So if you go down south, especially if you're on the Gulf and you see these houses that are elevated, some of them 20 or 30 feet in the air, that's in response to these standards. So there are ways to build in these flood hazard areas, but there aren't really ways to build in the moving water flood hazard areas. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting regulation, but we're in a good place for it.
Great, thank you. So this is something that the modifications will be coming to us for.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's the same thing you see here. It'll just be put in ordinance format.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, on to tree preservation
All right, yes.
Need to approve this?
No, that'll be on your agenda next time.
next month.
So,
Yep, we'll get the actual.
yeah, if you have any questions, I can find out. So let me know if you have questions.
All right, so Mika, I'm going to ask you to introduce this, but I think this is something we've been talking about a lot lately. It comes up in one form or another, I think, in every application that we've been seeing. And what we've been seeing as of late are some things that are making it even more challenging. I think drainage being one, drainage swales. Things have come up around, what types of trees should be put in. We've had one recently where it was a lot of deciduous trees. We want to replace some of those with evergreens so that it's a year-round, not just a seasonal buffer. So I think this is really timely. We talked about trying to accelerate this and get it top of mind for us and try to see what changes seem to make sense. And I think it's going to be a really good discussion. So Mika, I'll hand it off to you and take us through what you got here.
I'll take you through it. There isn't a whole lot more to take you through other than what Thomas said. I think what the purpose of this conversation is to launch a revision of the tree preservation ordinance. And we have a couple other things that are coming up as well. So, we might be going a little bit to and fro. But I'd like to start by just having kind of an intentional conversation about the things that you've noticed as far as pain points, the things that bother you personally, the things that you'd like to see change, the thing that you don't know if we're allowed to do, but would like to find out, things you have questions about. So you can structure this conversation how I would like if we just want to start talking about, your thoughts in general on that. I'm going to be making notes kind of on these specific items that I had noted, which are pain points, things that we're looking for a solution or having trouble with, desired outcomes, what you'd like to see out of it. If there are very specific things you'd like to address in the areas where you would like to know more information that I can come back with. I've been looking at ordinances from some different communities. Grand Rapids, you sent me one from, I forgot the town. Bluefield Township, City of Holland has some landscaping ordinances. There's a lot that's out there that we can pull from, we can draw from. There are some best practices that have been established. So just like to hear what your thoughts are as far as setting up what we would like to see in Park Township. All right, want to lead on, I'll finish it.
I just have a show and tell to start off with.
Okay.
Our ordinance, and it may be absolutely correct, but I don't think when people see the definition of a tree in our ordinance and then put a measure on what a tree is, that's what our ordinance says is the diameter of a tree 4.5 feet off the ground. I think we get confused that any little thing bigger than your finger is a tree, gets us confused about clear cutting and doing tree inventories and doing all those things. That is a tree that if it's in the woods, it's 20 years old, and if it's not in the woods, it's at least 10. And so that was very helpful to me to understand that's what we are talking about, the size of a tree that we are trying to preserve and manage. That's, by the way, that's 6-inch ZBH.
Yep.
diameter breast height.
Breast
Don't
height.
ask me how that name ever came together. But I bet you it was a male forester.
So that's interesting, and I think about, well, what about that 5-inch tree that's almost six inches? You know, so, I mean,
That's not a tree, according to our ordinance.
and I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
I'm not disputing that.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised if these tree ordinances that are getting passed along identify it the same, because that's a pretty standard definition of when a sapling becomes a tree. And it's when they become adults, and this thing is probably in its late teens in age.
I was actually just driving through northern Arizona last week. And I was driving through an area where they had a pretty large forest fire. And guess which one survived? The big tall ones, the mature trees, and all the undergrowth, all the small ones were gone. But those big trees are the ones that can survive a lot of disease, fires, and whatever. So I think I get really passionate about not taking out big trees, because they are such a precious commodity, and they take so many years to develop. But then I started looking at that same forest, and all these little trees are starting to come up, and they're starting to grow, and so those need to be protected as well, because they were all taken out. So to me, I think how we classify, how we measure, how we do all of that needs to be looked at. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think that our current standards are there for interpretation. And I think we all think about it differently. And I think that we just need a lot more detail to make sure we're all thinking the same thing. When a developer comes in, they know exactly what we're thinking, so we can get on the same page sooner. So I think we're just too vague and too general right now.
I would agree. I think, yeah, one of the things, and I'll pass this out. In fact, I might as well do it now, just to maybe foster some thoughts, because I pulled this up this afternoon. Sure, I see enough here on this side. Yep. So this is actually from Bloomfield Township, and one of the things, I jumped through a few of these, and I think Mika made a great comment. There's a lot of really good stuff out there that some other folks have done. Out the bottom of this has the link in it, so you can check it out. One of the things I liked was they use landscape terms like caliper, drip line, understory, things like that I think are relevant in this type of case. They have a great definition of clear cutting, at least I thought it was. What they call clear cutting is the removal of a significant amount of trees and vegetation from an area such that the removal negatively affects the overall character of the lot. And I like that, because I think taking out trees for development is absolutely a requirement, but clear cutting puts a different spin on it. At least it does for me when I think about that. The other thing, and Dan, I think you'll appreciate this, they actually, they have two definitions, one for protected trees and one for landmark trees. And they talk in the ordinance about how those have to be treated. They also have a list of those trees that are considered landmark trees in the ordinance itself. They also have a list of invasive species right in the ordinance, which I thought was pretty cool. I think, again, I'm thinking about how do we make this clear? We could agree whether or not we feel that the trees in there that are listed need to be modified at all, but I think having as much detail in that helps us, helps developers, it helps homeowners. And one of the things I found that was interesting about this is this, I think ours tends to be very focused, which I think is appropriate, because this is where it falls into our wheelhouse around new developments. But the one that we looked at for Bloomfield Township also applies to individual homeowners. So it gives them guidance on some of these same things. So I don't want to go too far into this, but I think there's some really interesting parts in here that would be helpful to us as we start to work on this.
As I was looking at this, I was really curious, so I used a little bit of AI help. So what I said to AI is, as a planning commission member in a community, and I did our mission statement, and looking at tree preservation, what are some things that we should be looking at? And so here were three big things that they said. One category is we need to be really focused on preserving existing trees.
Mhm.
That's one category that we need to have multiple, headings underneath that. Then a second one was promoting biodiversity and resilience. So what kind of trees are we putting in there? What are we supplementing it with? Because it's more than just the deciduous trees and then the resilience of those for disease or extreme cold or whatever. So they said you need to write some sections around that. And then the third thing was ensure proper planting and maintenance of what goes in there. So I thought it was kind of interesting just to see what AI said would be some broad categories of what we should be considering. So those are broad, but it's just like, there's some language in there that I would not have thought about.
Yeah. Well, it's also good to start the old things, start with the end in mind, right? What's the objective of of these the changes or the modifications or revisions that we're thinking about? I think we, from a practical standpoint, kind of know why, because we're running into challenges that we have to kind of figure out on the fly and as our developers. But I think really starting with what is it we're trying to accomplish, and I think those are some great points. Might be a good place to start.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased. I put a little star next to the invasive species because when I was going through the pain points that we had listed, I know we've had a couple opportunities to review plans and we've received feedback and had, other members confirm that some of these plots have had invasive species on them. And we don't specifically address, right? We look at from a whole perspective and what's being removed, but it does make a difference if we were to think about how invasive species are managed relative to those that are native. So I definitely think that's something we should add to our pain point list.
Agreed.
I think something else that I think has gone back and forth just depending upon the site and who's presenting, but we've talked about tree inventories. So, getting more detailed around when do we require a tree inventory, because sometimes we have and sometimes we haven't. So some consistency around our approach on that, I think would be really helpful. And I remember one in particular where they did do a tree inventory and literally there were these big sheets of paper and I was having to lay each one on the floor and say, well, this is what's there. Then I go over and I look at this other sheet and say, well, this is what you're proposing. And it's just like, is that tree the same as this tree over on this sheet? And I think what I've asked for before is there needs to be one sheet that's overlay, which starts to show the site the way it is now. If they do a tree inventory and even it's healthy trees, these are the trees that we're going to keep. And then here are the buildings that are going to influence that. Right now, it's very hard to go from one big sheet to the next and to translate all of that. So I think whoever comes in needs to be able to give us more insight to that. I think even just the recent one that's going in across from Family Fair. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, there are a lot of trees there, and I think I could understand which ones were coming and going, but it's hard for us to respond when we're having to interpret that much. So I think that should be a minimum requirement, and we have more clarity on one plan.
Agreed.
And where there are tree groves and some of the language that we use, where are they? Identifying these are the bubbles of where those exist. So we would be much better at what we can respond to if we could see that.
I agree. I think the other thing, and Mika and I have talked about this, but the 1,600 square foot canopy. that's a massive tree. And I think we're using that, somebody had said that Grand Rapids uses that, city of Grand Rapids uses it as a standard. I've probably got one tree in my neighborhood that's that big. It's a massive red maple and it's probably 40 years old. But I don't know that many trees that we're looking at are going to be that large. So I don't know if that's a standard that's, again, I mean, those are
Questionable.
yeah, I mean, those are some things that we might, we might want to look at. The other thing I'll mention about this, and I printed their ordinance, this is one of the things that fascinated me the most about tree health condition. There's a scoring criteria that they've set up. And they look at the trunk, the growth rate, the structure, whether it appears to be diseased, the crown, the development, and life expectancy. And they actually give it a numeric rating and determine whether or not that tree is one that would be protected under this section. So it's again, I'm not sure what the requirement might be. I don't know, probably enforcement is not the right word, but what the oversight on something like this would be. I think it's an interesting approach if we're trying to get more objective about some of these things. But again, I just thought that was pretty cool. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at it. Yes. Yep.
I don't know if it's too detailed to get into, but thinking about, potential recommendations when reforestation is necessary. And I think we have recently had some feedback and communications, right? There are some trees that could be considered nuisances, sweet gum, sycamore, a whole bunch more, like anything that has spiky little balls. I mean, quite frankly, a black walnut tree would be a terrible nuisance tree to reforest a neighborhood with, right? So I think if we're looking at, having something that would be a little more helpful for the developers, if we had a preferred recommended list, not that it would be a requirement, but a place to start with what would be perhaps recommended to taking into consideration the trees that would be native to the area that are relatively disease resistant on the whole. Certainly that would be something that would unfortunately have to be periodically revised in the future as things change and unfortunately pests and diseases evolve. But thinking about the conversations that have come up, right? I think I like the table. I think, love to take a closer look at what that criteria is for the tree health, but trying to simplify or provide more of that guidance too. I think if we could have a recommended list, that would be very helpful. Even for homeowners, right, who are just looking for something, in addition to the developers.
Yep. Yeah, I think the homeowner piece is really important. I think that, to go through the work of defining this and revising this ordinance, I think to take a look at it from a view of a homeowner that's trying to decide, I've got this tree and, how do I handle it? Is there a requirement to get some type of a permit if it's dying in my yard, or can I just take it out? How do I know what those, what types of trees are prone to that type? I mean, and this is kind of your wheelhouse, Dan, but I think if we can try to make this also useful for individual homeowners, when we start thinking about this, it would be a good piece as well.
Well, I want to be a little careful that we don't classify all trees as either a native, but if they're not, they're invasive, because there's a whole bunch in between that we have. I mean, there's a lot of cultivars that were introduced that became natives because they reproduce themselves. I hate for us to get too specific and if it was 15 years ago, we would have been putting ashes in and it's all over and elms.
Emerald ash blooms would have been down by now.
Yeah. So I'd be uncomfortable, putting handcuffs on saying they have to be native, but I do not have any problem putting handcuffs on saying they can't be invasives, and
Right.
and that list continues to grow, but it's not. A native list will get really small really
Yeah.
fast
Yeah, no, I,
and
Great point.
prone to disease running rampant in a community.
yeah, and those change too. Yeah,
Yeah.
those evolve.
Yeah, the other thing that I've noticed in my brief stint here is we don't specify size on the replacement trees. We can do the calculations of how many new trees we put in, but we don't
Right.
give any guidance on the caliper of the replacement trees. So, you know, yes, I think we should, and yes, I think we should be reasonable about what's the best we can do for the price point they are. It's not these trees when they, you know, you're not going to get these trees. You know, I'll ask Mike, what's the typical size tree when you have to plant a tree? What's 2.5 inch to 3? Yeah.
Is this public comment?
No, no,
And,
no, but you're okay. We directed the question at you.
I
If you want to provide feedback.
can give you a little bit of.
yes.
So, so I want to give a little bit of a nod, you know, to my father, who was a developer. If you go and look at a field of developments around here, you do have to understand that most of those trees that you're seeing start out as street trees. And so when you go into Bay Meadows, Silver Ridge, you know, those communities, and you go, wow, this is a tree community, it's the street trees that you see. And when you realize that the city of Holland is Tree City, USA, the trees are street trees. Primarily that you see in the city of Holland. Or a good share of them. And so I just, you know, I think there's maybe an advantage here to look at a few different things. I think you're doing a great job struggling through this. You know, maybe there's incentives for preservation, you know, within your PUD, and you just, you know, you somehow try to maintain the flexibility that you recognize that ordinances, zoning, restrictions, drainage, all of this is going to require this design. However, but what can we do once we start putting the project back together? And that might be 2 trees, 3 trees per home site. And that might be the street tree, one deciduous, you get to name what, you know, the trees are, and maybe it has to be a tree somewhere else in the yard. And that's coming back, and that's what I think you see in a lot of, you know, subdivisions down the way. The other is I think you have to allow for a little bit of creative engineering, which is difficult because you don't allow for a whole lot of creative engineering, you know, within your ordinances. And the PUDs have changed, drainage has changed. 2010 International Fire Code has changed. And what it has done, you know, I've been around just long enough to know that, you know, PUDs 30 years ago, you know, well, that was a wrestling match of, you know, we wanted this and you wanted that, and somehow we got to this happy medium. PUDs nowadays are just basically following your ordinance. There's not a whole lot of flexibility. So if you can try to put some flexibility into your tree ordinance, I think you're going to be better off. And that might be some creative engineering, whether that's stormwater, whether that's you know, size of the home sites. Say, you know, if there's big trees right in the middle of, you know, a home site, but we can't shrink the home site and still get a home. You know, should we be allowed to shrink the home site if we're agreeable to it? We're the ones who have to make money and sell it. Why can't we go to a smaller home site, preserve the tree? Your ordinance probably doesn't love that. So you probably have to get used to departures or, you know, standing up and saying, we're just gonna have a bunch of departures to get what we want, and the developer gets what they want. My experience, trees are different. You know, so a 25-year-old maple that is maybe at the end of its life and is now too close to a house or right in the middle of a townhome community, which I have. You know, we're just pushing the problem down about 10 years.
Yeah.
And then in 10 years, they're gonna take big trees out. And we're just turning it over to our condominium association to have to worry about those trees coming back. So again, I think the arborist coming in, you know, I don't love it, but I think it's probably the right thing to do. But yeah, we'll listen to the arborist when the arborist says, you know, it's a 25-year tree and it's about at the end of its life. Or it's a scrub tree that, or an invasive tree, or whatever you want to call. So I think that has to go there first. Simply my opinion. I like the types of trees. You know, just coming back after the fact. And that's the nice thing about street trees, or taking trees out and you get to replace them with maybe a better tree that's, you know, now has, you know, a 25, 50-year runway ahead of it. But I think that's my view. I think
No, it's good.
you know, I know you want to kind of rope it down, but at the same time, if you can give some flexibility in there, I think you probably win. That's my public comment.
You got it for 3 minutes too, Mike, thanks.
I like the definition of flexibility. When you said that, it's just like, what do you exactly mean? So that example was very helpful. Because there's something that you said that jumped out is, so if you have a tree stand and it's right where a house, where you really want to keep the trees, but then you have no flexibility on anything else, then that means you have to take the trees because there's not flexibility in how we look at that whole development. And I think that that's what is helpful. I know recently, you know, you came in on a development and it's just like, I drive by that street every day and I can't think, I cannot even look over there because I know some of the most beautiful tree stands are going to come out because I don't think we had enough in our tree, I can't think of the right word. Ordinance.
Yeah.
To keep that from happening and couldn't give you the flexibility that you needed. And it's just, that's the
You
kind of
just have enough. You had plenty of teeth in your tree ordinance. You didn't have enough flexibility
in the
the
rest.
rest of it.
Yes, yeah.
And that's what you're gonna run into is, not that, you know, the nuclear option for Foxwood is, we don't get it approved after a couple more, or you go nuclear. We simply come back and go, by rights. We're gonna shove a public street in there, we're gonna hit 90 feet. And that's probably what's gonna happen with your developers at some point, if you don't have any flexibility, they're just all gonna go by rights. And the PUD ordinance doesn't need any,
Right.
Right.
so you gotta keep some flexibility.
Mhm.
Good input. Other thoughts? Thanks.
I just circled some, as I read through here, it's just some words that really jumped out that, and we talked about some of them, but tree stands is one that really jumps out at me. The other word is kind of this health analysis. You talked a little bit about an approach in terms of how we do something like that. The whole reforestation, that 25% number that we use in there, is that really the right number? And what exactly does that mean? So I think some clarity around that. It was super helpful. Just a few things that jumped out at me. The street trees, and I think you listed like 11 of them on this page. They all made sense to me. The first one though, it's kind of curious. 152nd, right where we are, you only go to Post Avenue. How come you don't go all the way down to Waukezu? Because that's where some of the most beautiful trees are.
Unless I think you're the only one who was here when the tree preservation ordinance was written. Were you around, Dave? Do you remember how the boundaries of the street tree portion of the tree preservation ordinance were set? Yeah, I don't have it.
Figure out, that makes sense, that makes sense, that one, this one here didn't make sense.
What was the block that was missing? that you thought?
From Post all the way down to Wacazoo, is that last stretch? where-
Oh, yeah.
That's the most beautiful road of trees I've ever seen. I'm just really excited we're looking at this now.
One thing, is sort of in a general organizational. When I read this tree preservation for the first time, I think, I'll cut to the chase. I think we need to separate development rules from street tree rules. I mean, street tree rules are easy, but that we seem to, as I read this ordinance, we weave in and out of going from street trees to development and back. And I think those are really two separate animals with some common definitions. But I think that would ease things for users in the community of the tree ordinance.
I don't think developers have a problem with street trees because they're gonna put them in to beautify their development.
But the rules about how far from the right of way, how far from the pavement for a property owner.
Right.
Asking the question, well, what can I do? Don't even know we probably have a tree ordinance, you know, and so I think it would behoove the community that those are both in it, but categorized or gone through separately.
Yeah.
I think the timing on this is really important because we talked about infill projects. That's a lot of our growth in Park Township. And so just a lot of the presentations we've had over the past few months are infill projects, right? And you find neighbors that, you know, nobody likes to see that land go away. So I think the tree preservation and being really good and clear about that is going to be helpful as we have quality infills. I think that's the timing, I think is really important. And then I know the second thing is we talked about, you know, 40 feet of tree preservation, but guess what? The leaves are all gone and headlights. I mean, I'm experiencing where we live now because I couldn't see the stuff behind me. But now it's just all those lights are just shining like right through the headlights all the time. And so, you know, being able to, you know, what are some evergreens that you put in there and what size are they? Because they did put some in. I'm still gonna be looking at that for another 10 years before they grow up. So what is the size? And it is a decent size, so you're not waiting a lifetime for that to change. But those are just a couple of things that jump out at me.
One thing, and really farther along in the process, we'll make updates to the ordinance, we'll notice it. But I think this would be one, once we get to that point and once it becomes official and is updated, would be really great to highlight in our township newsletter when it goes out, because I think it's something that when the public does come to comment on a lot of the other developments, which they may or may not necessarily know too much of those details until they receive the notice of those. So maybe highlighting the changes that we're making to that ordinance might be something to kind of re-engage with the community, because it is definitely something that they are passionate about. But I can even speak for myself, right? I wouldn't have gone to go through the ordinance before coming to a public hearing on a development to have that level of detail. And they probably by and large still won't, but covering some of the highlights of what we're changing and maybe some of the why might be something that goes a little further with the community on one of the topics that we know that they are pretty passionate about based on the feedback we've gotten from our master plan survey and the work we did.
Yep, and I think referencing that is important too, because this isn't, I mean, what's reinforcing that the fact that we need to do this and we really need to do it now is the feedback we got and the input that we got from the master plan and how important this is. And how many challenges we're running into right now, being able to accommodate this with some of the developments we're seeing. I think, I do think flexibility, I'm not sure how we build this in and how it correlates to the PUD ordinance, but I do think that my experience, and Len, I'm sure you'll agree with this, is that when you add flexibility, the creativity and the end result is usually better because you get ideas and things that wouldn't have come up in the past, but you get different thoughts and different approaches that come into play. So, hey, we've already seen that need when we have things like drainage swales and you can't plant trees in those. So that's just one area that we know we're going to have to figure out.
One idea that jumped out at me when I read the discretionary nature of buffer areas and something else reminded me of it. But and when you talked about the 1,600 square foot tree
canopy,
tree canopy, that some that measurement got thrown at us, and I don't know if it was only in the last 6 months since I've been here, or was that used prior to that? But anyhow, an idea that I came up with my brain was we could have an ordinance that starts with a 40-foot buffer area. And if you want to reduce that, then bring us your tree inventory and not allow a 1,600-foot bogey,
right?
That can replace the cost and effort of a tree inventory. And if you don't want to do that, then you've got a 40-foot buffer area. Let's try to get some stakes in the ground.
I like the comment around, I think Mike made a comment around incentives to be able to get creative around some of these things. I like that because, if there's a motivation to be creative, to be able to save some of these, they called them landmark trees in here, but.
Yeah. I was just thinking of a recent, I think it was Trillium, where I think we were able to go from a 40-foot to a 50-foot, you walked through and I know I walked through. And so that was good that we were able to get that extra 10 feet. But what if there's this landmark tree at 55 feet or at 60 feet? And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's a 200-year-old tree. How can we take that down? So, I mean, sometimes you have to look beyond that 40-foot or that 50-foot and see what's there and then be creative in terms of what kind of flexibility we can give them to protect that. And that's
allow the creativity. Yeah, 2 oak trees in Trillium.
Yeah.
Will they survive?
The Twin Oaks.
The Twin Oaks. They'll have to rename the street.
Barely known as a substance.
So first heard tree canopies, I didn't think of it as one tree and its canopy.
Right.
I thought of it more as a grouping of like 3 next to each
Like
other.
a tree stand.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like your definition. It's like if you're looking from above, right?
Right.
Looking from above.
You see the top of the trees.
And a number of trees that create that.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah.
That's a 40 by 40 foot canopy, which sounds like a whole lot less than 1,600, but it is.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's 40 feet by 40 feet. And that's where we came up with the 40-foot buffer on Trillium Ridge.
Right.
Was off a 40 by 40 plot of that 1,600-foot bogey, which I have no idea where it comes from.
Right.
But if they were going to use it, I was going to fight back.
Very tiny. So you just listen to the feedback and come back with kind of a format and a structure.
Yeah, so listening to your feedback, and then I'm going to continue to go through some of these ordinances and pull out some of the stuff that I think is good. Some of the things like, you're talking about this 1,400 square foot tree, and looked at Grand Rapids ordinance. I'm a little bit skeptical. And that's something that we were just too pressed for time. I was too pressed for time to dig into as much as I would have liked to at the time. So yeah, getting clear on some of those.
So that's relatively new?
That is relatively new, yeah. So in the past, the planning commission has the ability to require a tree survey. But it adds expense. It's kind of an intensive activity. And so I was telling developers, let's try, this estimate and then, bring it to the planning commission, and you guys can still request that tree preservation survey, but let's see if this gets close enough, or if we're happy with what we're getting. And I'm not really happy with what we've been getting as far as estimate. I don't think it's as good as sharp as I'd like to see. So I think seeing how other places do it, maybe that survey is the way to go. Maybe there are other options. So I'm kind of listening to what I hear. We'll pull stuff from ordinances and then bring those pieces back to talk about, and then we'll smash it all together.
Well, you're using two words interchangeably that aren't, and that's a survey and an inventory. And a survey is, I mean, there's forestry standards about the size of the plot that you do an actual inventory in, and the size is representative of the entire acreage or whatever it is that you're trying to understand what's there. And then, so you do a plot, then it becomes a multiplication thing, but you still, so a survey is doing a tree inventory of a particular plot and then extrapolating to get a sellable inventory. And that's how, when Forester goes into 160 acre woodlot and comes out with how many board feet of timber there are in there, he didn't count every tree. He used the survey method, and he might have had several plots. So I think what you were asking for was that concept of the developer figuring out one part of the property and then how big's the property compared to that part, and that's my number. And it's used, but dividing by 1,600 isn't.
Mika, something you said that jumps out, the tree inventory. So it could cost them more, but I actually like that, because if we have that to say, no, I mean, you will always, infill projects should have that. And I think that they know that we're gonna be serious, we're gonna be taking a look at what that is. And so it's not an optional thing, it's something that I think we have to require especially important on those.
And remember, we're asking them to count trees this size or bigger. It's not every tree they're counting. That's what we're asking for, is how many of these or bigger are out there and what are they?
Yeah, I hear that. So I'll see what I'd like to see is, they've got that option. What else is out there? And then bring it to you and say, this is the one that we're going to land on. But I hear what you're saying, because I've thought that too, that when you get that survey, then or whatever you call it. Jordan's thinking over here. So she knows already. I think she'll be grilled later. That means I'm talking too much. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Any other thoughts? Have we given Mika enough to work with, or
Yes, I have a couple of people that I don't have opinions from.
Oh, I just do one question, I guess. So we do tree preservation for development. We got a 40-foot buffer. What's to stop me from buying that lot and clear cutting the backyard so I can put a swimming pool in there? I mean,
so
once somebody owns the land, I mean, I see like on Lakeshore Drive, last summer, I think it was, somebody cut about 80 pine trees. They got one of those big, huge, long front yards, and they cut all those pine trees out. It's like, that's not preservation. They didn't replace it with anything.
No, and there are ordinances that address private property. It gets, as far as individual home sites, it gets a little bit stickier and a little bit trickier. And I think that's where you see some more legal challenges come in. But you can, especially if you're at development stage, there are ways that you can say, no, this is the designated area. I ran across a development from a long time ago where this was required, and I think this was a PUD before it was a tree preservation ordinance, where they required staking. They required it to be set up almost like an easement of a kind. So it was almost like a preservation easement or something like that within the property. So I don't know a whole lot about how those are established. then you've got that next piece of it is who exactly is watching that, who's policing that, how are you keeping up on that? And that's probably the trickier part of it than setting it up.
Right, yeah, because I used to live in Wachusett Woods,
Mhm.
and there was 3 tree companies that basically parked their vehicles in the woods at night. I mean, it was full-time business for them to work in there,
Mhm.
and you know, somebody dropped a big branch, the whole tree went, and then what happens is kind of a domino effect, because you take out one big tree, and then the tree next to it's kind of relying on that, and the wind blows to.
Right.
You know, they're kind of supporting each other. I had one in my backyard. Matter of fact, I lived with the only undeveloped lot behind me for about 20 years, and then somebody came in and cut 80% of the trees out. Within 2 months, I had a big leaner, and the only thing that kept that up was the next tree over.
You bring up a good question that I'm confused about is if we have, is the development side of our tree ordinance for some, this many homes and greater, or is it for somebody buying a lot and building a house?
It's anything that goes through the planning commission.
Right. And today that's
So
just developments.
Yeah, just about, it's not somebody that owns a lot and building a house on it.
Right,
Only their street trees are subject to the
right.
tree ordinance, not if they want to clear cut it and put in a pool, they can, right? According to ordinance.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Then you're dealing with property rights at that point.
Yeah. So what is,
Some of the work we do becomes moot then.
what is the minimum number of homes that
The ordinance doesn't state a minimum number of homes.
is the
So,
development?
I think, well, so like functionally, or it could be as small, in concept, it could be as small as 3 or 6 homes. In practice, I think, I don't know that I've seen them less than a dozen.
They have to come through the planning commission.
Mhm. Yeah, because once you need a private road, that needs to come through the planning commission. I don't think, or it's supposed to. I don't think that that's something that the planning commission has anything that small since I've been here in the 4 years I've been here.
Yeah, you
But-
can do so many splits without.
Yeah.
Planning or. and the
So a tree ordinance that says,
Looked at increasing that.
The number of splits.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a tree ordinance that says no clear cutting is not applicable to a single lot
right.
owned by somebody.
Which is one of the interesting things about this is that they did try to include single home ownership as well as single lots as well as developments. So. Something to think about. One more thing to think about.
It's a good question, David.
Yeah,
And
it
I
is.
don't really know what the answer is, but. And
Sometimes
sometimes
the answer is you can't stop it.
No, you can't. I mean, the only thing that I can think of is, not that it would come through us, but is there, they go over Marigold and Wapazoo Woods, they have homeowners associations, right? So to me, it's just like, it would have to be something that they would have to adopt, that if the tree is that big, then that has to go before the association to say, is that right or not? And then it's a vote, but it's nothing we can control, but is there something that we can offer as a best practice to homeowners associations or even with Boscraft now, when they're doing site condominiums, they have lawyers that are drawing up their standard clauses. That'd be awesome to put something like that in there. We don't have to mess with it, but can we influence those organizations to make
Provide guidance to an HOA. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ours has it too. We can't take down a tree in our subdivision without approval from the HOA.
Yeah.
Now, if it's dying and,
Yeah.
or about to land on your garage. Yeah, it's a little different.
First language we could use that they could grab and adopt, and it's incumbent upon them to do that, but can we at least provide them some information that's helpful?
Yeah. You always bring up good stuff, man. You always bring up good perspective. We're sitting here going, oh yeah, what about, and it's legit. I mean, that is a challenge. We can do the best we can up to that point. Yeah.
Usually just somebody else does that.
Yeah. Dennis, anything to add? You've been kind of quiet down there. You've got like.
Well, all of the ideas of my head are radical, and I really don't.
But we know you're that kind of guy. So that doesn't surprise us.
We're just, spitballing. I really like the idea of having some kind of a ability to have an arborist come in and give us an assessment. And sit down with us and say, okay, the developer is proposing a PUD. I've gone through, I've surveyed, I've identified landmark, I've identified, whatever categories we come up with. And here's my recommendation for your consideration before you approve the PUD. I think that would really make the developers stand up and say, whoa, I got to think this through, or I'm never going to get it passed through the township. And it might make them a little bit more conducive to us asking them for some architectural ingenuity in terms of the layout of their PUD. Right now, we don't have any teeth. But if we set up a procedure to do that, I think we'd have a lot more credibility.
It's not that radical.
Well, but I think about the authority that you're assuming that you didn't have before.
We get landscape plans, and sometimes the site plans include what they think are out there for trees, but it's not that specific.
Yeah, the ones that they will typically submit initially will say kind of general tree cover, and then
Right.
I'll usually ask for more than is originally submitted. As the ordinance is written right now, it says the planning commission may require a tree survey. And so, that's kind of in your part. I'll say, and what I'm hearing now is, nope, ask for more tree surveys than I've been asking for. Done. We can do that. But then I'm guessing how many tree surveys do they want, how much information and that kind of thing. So
What do you?
getting a little more specific in the ordinance on the front end, I think is really helpful, for me, rather than trying to guess what you guys want to see, and also for the developer to understand this is exactly what I have to do, rather than coming here and then having to go back and say, okay, now I have to do a tree survey once I've already kind of drawn something up. Yep. Yeah.
I think I like what you said, making them stand up and pay attention and know that we're really gonna be asking for something more creative in terms of how they do it. And I still think of the comment that you made a couple of times ago. It's like, why do you like develop the snuff out of this? And that's true. And it's just like, and I go back to this one development, the one that I can't look at when I drive by. Because literally, it's just like every square inch had to have a house on it. And so like, what if you don't put two houses over there? What if that is preserved up in there and you bring your entrance over in here? And literally, when you drive in, you see this beautiful swale of trees and everything. That's your landmark entrance into a subdivision, as opposed to both sides fully lined with houses. That's the kind of stuff that I don't want to see in our township. I think we're better than that. So I hope that whatever we write can be something that allows us more, they take us seriously and they really know that we're gonna abide by that. It's not the way it's always been. It's gonna be hard, more thoughtful, more creative.
I agree with that, but you gotta look at it from a developer standpoint too. If he's got one less plot in that unit, that's a big chunk of money.
And maybe they shouldn't be buying that plot if it has that many trees and it's not gonna be able to, they're not gonna be able to maximize it. That that's not the right plot of land for them.
They didn't like what I said.
They didn't like
I
that.
It was true. It was true.
It is, but keep in mind the competing values that
Right.
we're talking about, because we also talk about housing. And so then think through, and I'm not telling you, yes, no, I'm saying think through in your mind, then how do those things meld together? What do you want to see to make both of those goals move forward, or to say this is a situation in which this takes priority or that takes priority, and just be conscious of that and be thinking about debating it as you're going through with the different developments.
Well, I think about right? So I think of a lot, I just go back to Trillium, because it's just the one that sticks out in my mind the most. But literally, rather than $700,000 homes going in there, you know, a developer could come in and say, there are so many trees in there that this could be smaller houses planned differently, roads that are done differently, and with a lot more trees preserved. So I think it would force developers to say, I still want to develop that, but I'm not going to do it with, you know, maximizing $700,000 homes on this property. I'm going to come back with something. I want the property, but I got to think about what I put on there differently.
I think oh, sorry, I was gonna say, we have to think, I mean, then it's bigger, it takes us back to our master plan and looking at our future land use and what we've already identified, and also how that ties into the rest of our ordinances. Because I think we don't have that, I mean, we've talked about wanting to see other creative developments, but our ordinances don't allow for those as it is outside of the tree ordinance. And so, like, I'm thinking of this in terms of like better, not best, so that we can make progress that we can define and we can use. But we're not going to be able to get maybe where we want to ultimately be with the tree ordinance until we can also spend the time working on our other ordinances to make them work in harmony.
So like zoning ordinances
Yeah.
and things like that.
Yes, exactly.
I think so, that makes sense.
Because I think we have things, we'll say, that are lower hanging fruit, if you will. We want to clarify this, we want to make it easier, we want to have a little bit more for clear rules.
Mhm.
That's like our short-term immediate goal, right? And some of these things that we're talking about, I think we should absolutely still pursue, but I think in order to make it meaningful, we have to look at those other pieces. And if we're not looking at them together and we keep doing them in individual silos, we're gonna, for ourselves and for the developers, keep running ourselves into, oh, this sounded good until we get to this part and now we're competing again, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate all of the added conversation, but from my perspective, I think, you know, maybe narrow down the 3 to 5 things we really want to see immediately change in our tree ordinance. And then, you know, as we have time when we need to, we know it's on our future agendas to continue to look at the rest of our zoning. But make sure that we're having those conversations, and kind of developing a plan to kind of keep a running list of what we want to change next based on how we're addressing some of our other ordinances. Because I feel like we could make recommendations and put them into this ordinance, but then it's not really being immediately impactful.
Right. No, it makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, and I just building upon that, so Mika, maybe, you know, what are the 5 big things, you know, that we've heard that we know that we need to advance on? But then, based on what Stephanie said and what Mike said, you know, basically, we need more flexibility in the zoning. These are some things that we need to look at. And then how do we work on that together to work on that kind of maybe a phase 2? There's a phase 1, the top 5 things, and a phase 2 of coordinating them together.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe that's a good approach.
As far as the phase 2 goes, one of the things, there are a few different things that we need to be looking at when it comes to housing, because that's one of the priorities. And the PUD ordinance is one of those things to be taking a look at, just to update it, to align it with where we're at right now. That's probably the place where we want to see the flexibility. So you've got kind of 2 paths. Mike alluded to this. You've got kind of these 2 paths to development. You've got the PUD, which is supposed to be a lot more flexible, and in practice is kind of being used as a way for the developer to avoid the public road so they can take one agency out of the mix when they're looking at things. That's not really what we want to see. Yeah, it's not, I mean,
It's
right.
not, but it is.
Yeah.
kind of
So,
fulfilling that, yeah.
you know, to be able to adjust that so we can see the flexibility that we're looking for and see the ability to meet some of the goals in a unique way. Then you've got the by right side of things. And so that's the part that I think is kind of interesting because, you know, Mike alluded to building more flexibility, and that's true with the PUD, but the whole point of that zoning ordinance is kind of that it's not flexible, but it's you get what you get, you know exactly what you're getting, you have the same rules, and it also makes it a lot faster and easier for the developers to go through, which brings costs down. But the key to that is having ordinances that we like. And I don't think in the conversation with Trillium that we really liked what we saw in that ordinance. Some of that may or may not be something that's even fixable. Some of that stuff just might have to accept. But I think those are kind of two avenues to be looking at is that, and there are other things as well. There's some more nitty gritty stuff that we're going to need to be talking about soon. So that with things like sewer and septic and some of those things that are not going to be maybe as exciting, but are pretty important. But when you take those two pieces, making that PUD ordinance work better, and then looking at the by right ordinances to see how can we shape the ordinances we have so that we get what we like, what we get out of that. Like those are two of the ways going forward. And I'm thinking of tree preservation kind of in both of those, how that functions.
So are those different organizations that have to come together to work on, I mean, how do you make that?
As far as which part of that,
Just PUD and the zoning and the by rights, I mean, so who owns that and how?
you do.
Yeah.
What organization?
It's part of the-
Township owns that? Is
You.
it zoning?
Yeah.
Us?
It's zoning.
It's
We have to the OP, the PUD?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a Park Township ordinance, so the planning commission writes, the township board approves. Yeah, yep.
So that's only us, so it's not. So how about the like zoning is that? Is that
Yep,
us too?
us too. Yep. So everything in our ordinances is us. Now, the trick is that they also, the developers are also interacting with all these other agencies who also have rules. But yeah, the ordinances are all us.
So I guess it's kind of like in our sequence of things to work on and then ordinance. So I'm hearing that maybe they're all back to back, and which one do you start with? Because that informs that.
The web.
Trees are right in the middle of both of those. So I mean, how do we 1, 2, 3 phase that? So
It's a great question.
I know. I thought there were other parts of Park Township that did some of that. I didn't know that involved the review.
Yeah, there are parts of the ordinance that are, I want to say this is pretty much all within the zoning ordinance. There are some things that kind of come in that are in the other section of the ordinance. It's kind of the police powers ordinance. It's outside the zoning ordinance. It's been traditional in Park Township and a lot of other places for the planning commission to look at all ordinances because the planning commission knows how to look at ordinances because you do it all the time. You're required, I think, to approve the zoning items. The other stuff can go straight to the board. And so they're a little bit different, but it's all kind of under the same township umbrella. Yeah, and I think it's a good question as far as how do we approach it? And I think that Stephanie's comments on the PUD ordinance or some of the other ordinances that we're looking at, I think are important in thinking that through. And maybe that's part of it, is just to be mindful of these as we're going through it and say, how does this ordinance affect all these different situations?
Right.
And part of redoing and revising. So the city recently, maybe, I don't know, maybe not so recent anymore, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, did a complete rewrite of their ordinance, a very dramatic rewrite. And so they have what's called an UDO now, a Uniform Development Ordinance, and it just pulls everything together. It's a very complex document, but it makes it a little simpler to read because you kind of go to one place and you can see where things are. Wrote that, and kind of like we're doing now with the tree preservation ordinance, which was written in 2019, and now we say, oh, we need to change this, we need to change this, we need to change this. They're going back around and working through that. So it's kind of an iterative process where you think through all the things that you know to think through, and then you get to it, say, oh, that didn't work the way that we'd intended, and then you kind of go back and iterate through that again. So probably having a little bit of maybe one of the next steps would be bringing some of those other specific things that are on the list and making that explicit as we're talking about the tree preservation ordinance, so it can be top of mind. I'm open to other thoughts, but that's my initial
I would agree.
thought.
But I think that connectivity between all of that just makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, we started talking about, the housing piece and trying to get creative approaches to housing and trying to find something that's attainable. And immediately went to the fact that the zoning ordinance doesn't allow a lot of the things we were trying to do, or we were thinking about doing, right?
Yeah, I was thinking specifically cottage courts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we don't have.
Yep, exactly. That's why I was like, what? For the purposes of what we're doing here right now, like what are our top things? And then how do we because right, it sounds, and it has been, it continues to be an iterative process. Once we have these ordinances, we continue, whether it's us or our successors, someone will always continue to come back and look at them. And that's kind of the beauty of it, right? Things change, life changes, needs change. And you continue to evaluate, is this working the way we needed to? Is it working the way we intended? And just trying to get the biggest bang to go in the direction that we're trying to get to, without getting so hung up that we wind up paralyzed and not able to actually make that action. Cause like, we only meet monthly, so there's only so much time we have to get through this and continue to move on to the next thing too. So.
Got to be able to execute the plan.
Yes.
Sound familiar? Great plans.
If someone who likes to plan and puts plans for a living. Like, all right.
Know that we only have so much time, so then I think, going back to your idea of what are the top 5 things that if we did it now, it would help us get better. That's what coming in, because I mean, I think I feel like there's a sense of urgency to get the top 5 things defined.
Yeah.
But then as we do look at some of these other zoning ordinances and everything, and we look for more flexibility, if we did these 5 big things now, your example, what are these 5 big things? And then we go into some of these other ordinances and we start working on those, because that's going to take longer. Could we then come back and say, oh, now that we've rewritten this, I want to go back to the tree preservation, and I want to add something.
The
to
phase
it.
2 piece.
So rather than waiting a year to get all of this stuff together, do we do something where literally in the next 2 months, we can at least get the 5 big things, and then we can come back and modify it as we learn more about the others.
I think we can. I think the only caution that I would give with that is that it's tricky to communicate what updated guidelines are, and if they're changing quickly, that gets hard for people to keep up with. But I think it's a good idea, and so let's just think about that and how that could work, and I'll ponder that a little bit, because I think getting something out there sooner rather than later is a good idea.
Mika, can I add, it's not a tree thing, but it's on your list of items to address, and this will be short. The railroad bad landscape section or design management for dry retention basins. If you've got a meeting with ODC and say, what would it take for you to give us as a township guidelines for ponds, dry retention, all those little things that are required now? They're in the business of doing that.
We don't need to present their.
Right, I bet you they've got it on the shelf. We'll sell it to you.
Or even the native species and all the things that we're talking about, they
Right.
have to have all of that research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
That's it.
That's it. Great input. I mean, I think the conversation was really good discussion. I think we've hit on the ones that we know need to be modified fairly soon because of the things we're running into. And I think there's a lot of good aspirational things in there too, and we've got to kind of hit the sweet spot. What are the things? Yep. Cool. We have, well, let's see, other business and announcements. First of all, are we good as far as the cut? Okay. I don't want to shut that off if we still got things we want to chat about. Other business and announcements, member and staff reports. Dennis, do you have anything for us?
Well, the zoning board of appeals did meet, and one of our applicants that we denied back in July reapplied and really didn't have anything that was concession enough for us to consider valid. And so we denied his request for a second time. And I realize it's difficult for the applicant because he has 2 front yards that he has to meet the minimum 40 feet
Okay.
setback. But he also puts us in a position where we just can't set that precedent. Give him 7.4 feet from the road. It just does not make sense. So we denied the application for a second time in 6 months. The other application was just the opposite. It was a non-conforming property. He asked for relief and it made excellent sense. And so we approved it. So it's not that we have a bias, it's the fact that we have to understand the circumstances and making sure that we're not setting bad precedent.
Makes sense. Very good. Thank you. Sure.
So I didn't prepare a typed summary like I normally do today, but off the cuff, I'll just go down a couple of our action items that we took care of. Dan Martin gave us his legal review of the short-term rental summary. And then Mika talked a little bit about enforcement and what plans are for going forward. Talked a little bit about Windstone Park Pathway Project, the agreement. And right now we're kicking that off and it's in the realm of $800,000 grant. But it's a good development, good improvement for that park. Office budget stuff, reviewed health plan insurance, and we're not gonna change anything this year, but look at stuff next year. Wyoming water plant, there was a bond refunding resolution, which is kind of misleading. We don't get money back. Maybe a penny a house, who knows? But it was just another legal document that we needed to go through. There's also a PA 198, which has to do with industrial facilities. It's a tax exemption policy, which we've not had because we don't really have a industrial zoned area.
Yeah.
But this specific exemption policy has to do with a blueberry farm that wants to process their blueberries on site. So it's not really an industrial type application, but it's, did I explain that right? They're processing their food.
Sure.
And they get a tax exemption for doing X amount.
Yeah, it's a kind of a cool project. It's Camp Ice Farms on the far north side, and they're expanding their facility. They've got like cold storage facility to use for their berries. And yeah.
Now, that's the kind of innovation that really,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, I kind of thought, as the plans came across our desk, we were trying to kind of figure out what to do then, because we're not used to seeing stuff like that too often. We spent some time with Dan on it, on both building and zoning side. It didn't normally in most cases, a structure like that would come before the planning commission, but it fell under right to farm, we determined, and so then that doesn't come here. But yeah, it is an interesting exemption because you can use it for agricultural activities as well as what we normally think of as industrial activities, and it doesn't change the underlying zoning or doesn't affect any of that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And ordinance, or is that PA?
We had to adopt the policy.
Okay.
Because we had nothing. That's what I got for you today.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Mika, what do you have? We've got I'm sure there's things brewing. I have one thing I mentioned, but we don't bring it up, yeah. Okay.
We have a new staff member starting on Monday that we're very excited about. Our front desk person, Sarah, that some of you have met in the past,
Yeah.
is now the deputy treasurer. So we're very excited for her in that new role. She's going to be great at it, very well suited for it. She's been doing 2 jobs now for the last few months. She's also in school full time. So she's very excited to have someone else joining us. So Anna is going to be starting on Monday. We're really looking forward to that. Short-term rentals enforcement is underway. I'm not going to give a whole lot of details on that because I'm not going to give a whole lot of details on that.
Right.
It's happening. We're moving forward.
It was the exact same story the trustees got.
Yeah.
We do.
And
They wear masks over there.
it's like this, yeah, in front of our faces. So yeah, we're working on that. And then the one other thing I wanted to mention is that Commissioner Eid is going to be retiring in May. He's term limited, and so he will be retiring from the planning commission and from the ZBA. And that means that it is.
It's organizational wisdom. This is very.
It is. So in addition to planning a party, a going away party, not a celebration party, going, sad to see you go party. There's going to need to be a planning commission representative on the ZBA. Of course, think too about if there are people that you know who you think would be good additions to the planning commission. But it would be better if it were someone who had some experience on the planning commission to join the ZBA as well. So then you would sit on both of those boards. I think it's a really important role because you really see both sides of it. The zoning is really the foundation of planning. And I think if you don't have a clear understanding of the zoning, it makes it a lot harder to do the planning well. So it's an important place. It's an important role. And you can see how things actually work when the rubber meets the road, because all of a sudden you've got all these requests for variances and you're like, this really doesn't seem to be working very well, does it? Why do we keep getting requests for the same thing over and over? So anyway, something to think about.
And the zoning board is very talented. The people that are on it are exceptional. So getting your feet wet would be an easy task because they're good stewardship there.
And I'm also very proud of you all. You're doing a very good job. I am. I've seen how you're having the conversations, and a lot of you have only been here for a few years. There are some places that have planning commissions where everyone's been there for 10 years or for 15 years. And we don't have that, but you guys have really grown in depth in your ability to listen to these conversations and to talk to each other in ways that are really constructive, and it's a pleasure to work with all of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike mentioned that today, and I was like, I'm a little,
We're very fortunate to have you, Mika. I mean, we'd be sunk without you, so.
I wanted to just comment on one other thing. Our interim manager, Bill Cousins, facilitated a very nice afternoon of personal growth training and team building. And they kind of went back and forth with different things through the afternoon. Everybody went through CPR training, and everybody went through, what was the other training? Oh, active shooter training, correct.
Oh, wow.
And then there was team building events in between. So it was really cool.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Entire building, yep. Bill shut the offices down for the afternoon and everybody went over to Camp Geneva.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah, so I thought that was extremely valuable to the team to do that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I think we've got, Mika, one thing I was going to mention if you didn't is I think we want to try to do a joint working session with the board, and we're looking at some dates. We had a conversation about a few things that are on both of our radar in terms of 2026. And I think Steve had shot a few dates over to us over to you that we were looking at. My thought would be the sooner the better. I think there was a January or February date in there, so I'm sure we're not going to have a hard time finding a topic or two to jump on, and maybe a couple of experts to bring in to give us more information on things that we're going to work on together. So
this be evening or daytime?
I don't know.
I think it's evening typically. So there's a fifth Thursday in the month, and that's when we would target that.
That either January or April, if you.
I think those were the first two dates. I think there were 4 dates during the year where that was the case. So.
Yeah.
And hopefully we would need the CPR in that case. nothing would create the need for that, but awesome. Anything else anybody's got? Yeah, Len, go ahead.
I had somebody ask me a question this past month. They were out in the audience and there was the public comment. And they asked the question, so if somebody's going to present a project, so why is the public comment before the project is presented? Because they basically said, I don't think I would have asked that question had I had the information. So like, if Boscraft wants to present something or whoever, the context of the project and what they're doing, they would rather hear that Then there was be a public comment and it would be more, they would feel more informed with their comments. So they asked that question. I said I would present it to the team
Sure.
and say, is that something we should consider?
I don't think there's magic to that. Because we've talked a little bit about that. I think the thought process of having public comment is that the applicant has an opportunity to answer some of the questions that come up in the public comment when they're presenting. That was the way I looked at it. Now, there's not magic to that. We could flip flop that. I don't think there's no ironclad flow that we have to use on that, but that was my thought. And because we had talked about kind of structure and how much flexibility we have. Yeah,
It's public, beginning and at the end.
right.
And there's no reason the developer can't come on the second time, right? After he presents comments, then he can come up with answers to it.
We could, but we need to be really, really careful
Yes.
in keeping the meeting structured because it can pretty easily get into a lot of back and forth and then stuff
Yeah.
gets a little bit out of hand. So that's why it's typically kind of packaged into the different sections. One of the things that we do talk about some, haven't really made any changes about, but have talked about a little bit, is just communication of what the application is. Because people don't seem to know how to find them or where to go. This stuff is all on the website a week before the meeting. All the plans, all the memo, all the everything, it's out there. We're missing something as far as people understanding how to get there. So
Right.
it's a thought. It's something, yeah, as far as how to get some of that information and help people understand
Right.
that it's out there for them.
So maybe is that a more productive way, is to try to get them to read about it before they come?
I think more likely just because there is a lot of information
Yeah,
that's there.
and that makes sense why they present afterwards, so if there are questions that they can respond to those. So that makes sense as well.
That was the thought. And I think, I mean, you heard my extended disclaimer this one today, right? We've talked a lot about, and Mika referenced from some of the things that came out of the conference recently, the planning conference, was really tightening down the whole discussion flow. Once we have public comment or public hearings, once that's ended, it's ended. And the last couple of meetings, I've let things go further than they probably should, and it gets a little out of hand, honestly. So I think, there's probably a balance in between, but we really do have to cut that part off once we're done and we're in deliberation and we're in discussion. So I'm flexible as to what order we put that in. But I think bringing the developer up a second time could open more conversation, kind of, yeah. Okay. More conversation, people wanting to ask more questions.
There is going to be a hearing. Is it objectionable to put a link in that letter saying here's where you can find the packet?
No, I think we could do that.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's a piece of paper, so it's a dead link, but yeah, we could say that that information, yeah, I think that's a great idea. We have in there that it's available at the township office for inspection. But that's kind of old. I mean, we just carry this stuff over. You have to be so careful with that. Because if you over notice, you can get in trouble as much as under noticing. It's a little tricky. So not legal trouble, but then you're disadvantaged. You can be seen as disadvantaging someone by stirring up more opposition to a project if you think that's
Right.
what's going to happen. So it's a little tricky, but it's just saying here's another place where you can find this information. I think we could do that. No, I think
Maybe
that
it's
is.
somebody say I don't have internet access, but.
Well, I mean, you would still say it's available here,
Available here, yeah. It'll be available at the
So
office.
you just add the statement
Yeah.
to us there.
All of this, just.
I think the later is perfect.
Rural neighbors.
Yes.
Drive all the way to the here, see that
Yes.
documentation.
Yep.
I'll send it to the Southside Fire Department. They might. They can answer all the questions.
Okay, and with that.
Just went home, so.
Should move for the
Support.
Okay, all in favor? I don't think there's anybody opposed. Thank you. Good stuff, folks. Thanks.
want to be some kind of